right, hey again, everyone. Channel Futures editorial director Craig Galbraith here. It's time for another edition of Channel Futures TV. Got a great chance today to talk with Mobolaji Sakumbi, who represents the Dell Small Business Alternative Routes to Market. Mobolaji, how you doing?
I'm good, Craig. How are you?
I'm doing well. Always great to catch up with you, especially to talk a little bit about DE&I, which we do from time to time. Maybe start off by discussing a little bit about Dell's current DE&I initiatives.
Yeah, for Dell Technologies, DE&I is in our DNA, right? The notion of equity, driving diversity, and making sure everyone feels included is paramount to what we do in our business practices, in how we communicate with our employees, and how we engage our customers. A couple of years ago, Dell made a concerted effort, an intentional effort to say that by the year 2030, 50% of our global workforce and 40% of our global workforce for like people leaders will be women, right, by 2030. And if you look over the past few years, we've actually made some advances in that regard. In the US, Dell went forward and said in the US, 25% of our workforce and 15% of our workforce in the US, people leader workforce that is, will be African-American, Black, Latino, Hispanic. Again, so these are intentional efforts by Dell to make sure that everyone gets heard, everyone feels included in what we do and how we relate with our customers and how the company has been seen and represented in the market. So D&I is crucial to what we do. It's embedded in our DNA. It's something that our leader, Michael Dell, over the last 40 years at the helm of this company has always talked about. So that's how much important it is to us.
So, Mobolaji, maybe you can talk a little bit about Dell's employee resource groups, or ERGs, and how they foster inclusivity and drive positive change.
Yeah, ERGs, Craig, are essential to how we drive connection and engagement for our people at Dell Technologies, right? Dell has about 13 ERGs. Those 13 ERGs, have more than 469 chapters in 80 different regions across the world. And so that's something that, it's paramount to how we relate with our employees. That's something that, ERG is something that, we talk to employees about constantly to be part of. The exciting thing is that over 50% of our employees at Dell Technologies are actually part of at least one ERG. You have instances where a number of employees are part of multiple ERGs. And ERGs are so important because these internal groups, they drive a ton of positive experiences around belonging and feeling that people can be connected. And so it's paramount to what we do also in the sense that for a lot of folks that feel excluded, because Dell is such a huge company, over 100,000 employees, when you go to ERGs, even though the commonality there is the fact that we all work for Dell, in an ERG setting, you can meet folks from different socioeconomic backgrounds, from different beliefs, regardless of their faith, their sexual orientation, their religious affiliation. And so it kind of creates this environment and atmosphere where people can feel at ease to talk about whatever's on their mind, even though they all work for Dell. Right. So that's why ERGs are so important. And I think the last thing I'd like to say about ERGs for Dell Technologies is that it allows an atmosphere where a ton of awareness has been driven around what different employees are going through. It's a safe space. So ERGs are important. It's an extension of our D&I vision. And so it's very important to what we do at Dell Technologies.
And that is so impressive to have that many people involved, too. That's great to hear. So how does your team or your department's diversity positively impact your corporate experience at Dell?
Well, whenever we talk about diversity, people always talk about the numbers. They talk about maybe the underrepresentation, whether that's, like women, different ethnic groups, and so on and so forth, right? Or it could be around maybe a religious representation or affiliation. One thing I did when I joined Dell Small Business several years ago was when I went to events back in the day. As you know, I've seen you a couple of times at trade shows. I found out back in the day that oftentimes when I went to these events, we were represented out there by males. And my thought was, wait a minute, we have a lot of women that are doing outstanding things in tech. We have a lot of women that, for lack of a better expression, are kicking butt when it comes to technology. We need to make sure we showcase that. So for me personally, it was imperative to make sure that my team reflected that. So if you talk to folks on my team, you guys know Tatum, Keller Regan, you have representation on my team to make sure that when we go out there and talk to our customers, when we go there and talk to our partners, they can see that DE&I representation on my team, not just from a gender makeup in terms of male, female, in terms of their background from like different countries, different nationalities. I mean, even as I'm talking to you, my former years were spent in West Africa, So I bring that kind of like uniqueness and thought in terms of what we even do within my team on Dell Technology. So that's how I've made sure that the whole essence of D&I is also represented on my team and what I do for Dell and what I do, on behalf of my team.
Absolutely, 100% Mobology. So maybe talk a little bit about some of the initiatives you take outside of work to promote DE&I.
Yeah, so I do quite a bit because I'm a big believer in the fact that if you want to effect a change, if you're in a position to effect that change, then do something about it. Like don't just talk about it. And in my role at Dell, in my leadership role, I oversee our alternative routes to market efforts in Brazil, in the US, and in Canada. And the number of things I've done. One is making sure that I know that annually I probably have about 6 weeks of vacation, and making sure that going into the year I take about 2 weeks of that, 2 to 3 weeks of that, and decide to go do something in the community. So earlier this year, I got connected with a female entrepreneur in Thailand that focuses on building communities. I got connected with her through our government affairs department here, through a gentleman called John Howard, who oversees government affairs for us in the US. And I spent some time in Bangkok earlier this year, where I went out there. We put on like pitch competitions, got a chance to meet with female founders on site in Bangkok, and even launch a pitch competition out there at the US Embassy in Bangkok. Last year, a year and a half ago, worked with a female entrepreneur in a country called Gabon, like a Central African country with a population of 2 million. So these are the things that I do outside of work. And what happens at work, what happens within Dell has fueled those passions for me beyond work. The other thing I want to mention around DEI that I think is important, that I'm very passionate about, is that Dell, a few years ago, in 2009, co-founded the Dell Women Entrepreneur Network, DWEN. It's a community of 102,000 amazing female founders that are doing extraordinary things. And so years ago, it's not uncommon for us to talk about how women are so on the front end right now in technology and small business. Dell was at the forefront of that since 2009 to address these issues, to tackle these issues. And so with everything that DWEN does, I've also been able to work with DWEN, our work and outside of work, to make sure that the voice of women are being heard in terms of what they do out there. So those are the things I do outside of work to fuel some of our DEI initiatives at Dell.
Well, Balaji, thanks for your efforts personally with DE&I efforts and Dell Technologies as well. Great to catch up with you today on Channel Futures TV.
Thank you, Craig. Have a great day.